What's going on, you guys? It's Eric here with Investor Central Club. We've got some earnings coming up after the bell, so let's go ahead and check out what we're about to see. Oh, looks like there's already 8 of you guys here. I love that. Okay, we've got Palo Alto Networks, which is the big one. And I know it's kind of, if you've been in stacks and you've been listening up to what we've had posted, you can understand that the stack signals that we're seeing right now are leaning a bit more bearish. So let me pull that up for you guys real quick. Palo Alto Networks, you can see they bought some puts today. You can also see they've been selling calls throughout the day as well. The most urgent ones I'm noticing here are these puts for under 167.5. Them selling these calls at 180 shows they don't see it going that high. And again, they got some puts for under 175. So in terms of obviously the safer one here, this one's very close to being in the money, the 175. The 167 is a little bit more of a gamble, but again, it's one of those things where if they are wrong here, that 313K they put in here is going to go to zero. But at the end of the day, they're seeing what, a $8 or $9 move down as a possibility. As of right now, we're seeing Palo Alto Networks trading at about 176. So we got that coming up. That's up to you. I'm gonna sit out on this earnings, but it is, if you are looking for that earnings gamble, I would probably say the higher risk one, the 167 for this Friday. If you want a little bit more and you're willing to spend the $600 or so on this one, the 175 has a greater chance of actually with the return. So if it doesn't drop all the way down to 167, the 175 still can be fairly profitable. But like I said, earnings gambles again are one of those situations where it definitely could go against you, but at least what big money is saying and what stacks is showing us is everything today that came in right before earnings is all leaning on the bearish side. I will also give you guys this. We had quite a few stacks AI prints come in today. We got Riot that came in. If you take a look at the chart, Riot shot up pretty quickly. We saw some meta calls for next January, and we see Reddit for middle of next year. The Riot calls are actually just for the end of this year, but those ones I do believe probably went up pretty quickly on in that situation as well. Let's pull up our charts so I can show you guys some of that. We got Palo Alto Networks on deck. We'll come back into this in a moment, but I do want to show you Riot today, right after that call. That one, let me show you. That one came in, Riot came in at 6:45 a.m. So right around here, okay? So since that call out, our stacks AI print, Riot, the stock itself went up almost 10%. It's sitting at about 8 to 9% now. So that's just one way for you to see. Definitely, stacks, sometimes you'll see stacks come in and it's going to move right away. Sometimes it's going to take a little bit of time, but if you guys have gone through my back testing and watched what I've had to say, more often than not, stacks is going to give you a proper positioning for the move to come. Reddit was the other one. Reddit hasn't quite moved like that today. It's actually, let me see when they got that one. Reddit came in at 11:45. So they're probably up a little bit at this point. Not a ton, but still. It's crazy that Reddit's trading at 242. Sorry about that. All right. We got Palo Alto Networks coming in. Oh, the last one. Let's talk a little quickly about BLNK. Let me get the dog real quick. as you guys can see, BLNK, which is coming up, we don't really have any information on that one for earnings as of today, so I'm gonna stay out of that one as well. CVX, all right, okay. Oh, that just came in. I will also point out our 1K challenge for our Robinhood count is up a little bit over 50%. I think it dropped just a tiny bit today. We did get into some K-Web calls. I will point out Wolf. We got into Wolf a while. We've been sitting on that position for a bit, and I just wanted to show you guys the chart right now. We saw it pop up over $10 this morning. We were in on this all the way back here. So we got in, you know, early June. Saw it dip a little bit, but we saw, you know, about 40-50% returns for quite a bit of time. And then just last week it popped like crazy. I did leave a runner, so that position ended up, you know, that pushed our 1K challenge into the green pretty heavily. Even though we did have some losses for our position in NU. We had, you know, a bearish thesis on NU, and it popped after earnings. So Wolf more than covered that. I will say that if you were able to hold up to today's high, that position was about a 500% return. That was due to us seeing unusual calls in Wolf coming in very heavily back over here. And like I said, when you see all that buying and continued buying as well, you can expect that there's probably going to be some sort of news or some sort of push sooner or later. So looks like today we've got Palo Alto Networks reporting after the bell. We are leaning more bearish on it, but we'll see what ends up happening with their earnings. We did also do our full report on it in our Discord, and if you're in Stacks, you can get that in there as well. All right. Almost closing time. If you guys are here, go ahead, comment Stacks. ICC, if you're here because of Trader Link, go ahead and let me know. Just always good to see who's actually here. Just also so you also understand too, we are doing a special for those that want to try out Stacks. The monthly membership, Closing Bell 20, will get you 20% off our monthly membership. So go ahead and check that out if you'd like to. That way you can get in on these, you know, not only the community conversation in our Stack software, but you can also check out whatever tickers you're looking at as a market is open. All right, we just saw the close. Let's see what ends up happening here. Let me zoom out on this for you. As always, I like to I'll pull up my Twitter and double check to see if any sort of information came in right away. But usually the first few minutes, it takes a little bit for them to report it, so. Yeah, nothing so far, so. Just that after hours market manipulation we always see what direction it goes. I will point out that on Stacks, our Palo Alto Network positions, you know, usually I like to see bigger money being taken. Let's say the puts we saw today, what, 250K, 300K, 130K. So overall, you know, comparatively, not the biggest premiums we've seen. But also on the other side of it is, you know, earnings, like I've always said, can be a bit of a gamble. But if you are on the correct side of it and Stacks, you know, helped you out with finding a good position to get into, those tend to be pretty nice returns when they do hit. IV on those ones are actually not that high either. Oh, 80 80. Sorry, I was looking at the other ones. The calls they sold were low, so IV for the put side is actually fairly high. Still nothing on Twitter so far. We'll see how that goes. While we wait for that, let me pull this up too. We're in Unity calls and got into some of those K-Web calls for our 1K challenge. So we're waiting for that to play out. Some people did actually happen to get out on this little pop that happened this morning. I saw some people with some pretty solid returns, I think 50-60% or so off of those. You know, we're in some weeklies at this point, so taking a little bit of risk with that situation. But I do think that we should peak up above 40 pretty soon. Test up above there, so if it does pop up over there, I would say probably maybe get out of those weeklies and maybe look for something longer term. $25% off lifetime Discord. Boron, are you in a different Discord? If you are, go ahead and message me, DM me. I'll get to that after today's stream. I gotta go into the back end of stuff, but yeah, if you're looking for the lifetime Discord, I can work with you on that. Palo Alto Networks, still just chopping around. Yeah, nothing so far. It's also on the other side. Let's pull up Blink. Yeah, Blink hasn't been doing too good. They tend to lose money, so. I've seen some of their chargers around. Still nothing so far. Sometimes we can see it 5 minutes, but generally I would say 15 minutes after the bell is where we're going to see the majority of it. Oh, seeing it push up. Did they beat? Let me type this in. Coming back down a little bit. Up 2%. Do we see earnings yet? No, I didn't see it. Still nothing. I do believe Nancy Pelosi is in Palo Alto Networks, so that could be one of the signals. Okay, let's see. Fourth quarter EPS. Ooh, EPS looks like they missed. Okay, there we go. Palo Alto Networks Q4. Revenue up 16% year over year. Revenue, let's see. Okay, 2.54 billion versus 2.5 billion estimate. There we go. EPS 95 cents. So yeah, double beat. Saw a double beat there. What was this then? There we go. All right, let's see how this reacts. Up 5% so far. Now up 6%. Let's see BLNK real quick. Yeah, BLNK missed. How high will we see Palo Alto Network go? Now up 6%. Oh, their founder's retiring. There's their CTO. All right, here's some numbers. We already did revenue. Revenue was basically in line. They beat by what, 0.04 billion. So what, $40 million beat. EPS was beat 29% year over year. Next gen security ARR 5.6 billion, up 32% year over year. Guide for next year. Revenue between 10.475 bill to 10.525 bill. Estimate was at 10.44, so up 14% year over year. Non-GAAP EPS $3.75 to $3.85. The estimate was $3.90 or $3.69, so up a little bit. Next gen security ARR 7.0 billion to 7.1 bill, up 26, almost 27% year over year. RPO 18.6 billion to 18.7 bill, up 17% year over year. Non-GAAP operating margin 29.2 to 29.7%. Free cash flow margin 38 to 39%. So their guidance is up. Yep. Solid numbers and solid forecast. How you guys doing? Comment for me while I'm on here if there's anything that you want me to take a look at on stacks, anything you want me to take a look at on the charts. We've got, we're only looking at Palo Alto and BLNK today. Let me see if there's anything else. I didn't really see anything else I really cared about for after hours today. We got what? Look here, we got Fabrinet, Agora, BHP, Flex Steel, Waldencast, XP, Zynoa, Nizoa, NYX. But yeah, I don't think we really care about those ones. All right, KWeb, IWM, Intel. Go ahead. Drop the rest of those that you guys want me to look over. I'll go through them one by one. And just a favor to ask of you guys, hit that like button, the thumbs up, not just the heart in the chat, but hit that thumbs up. We're just trying to make sure that YouTube helps push us out to more people if possible. Let's go through those. I'm gonna set a alert on Palo Alto to see if it goes higher. We'll drop one down here to see if it drops back down, if anything. So it'll tell us if anything changes. Okay, let's go into those. First one, KWeb. I know you guys that are in on this 1K challenge with me. I only took 5 contracts in on this today, but I've been discussing this for a while. I mean, it's really chopped around quite a bit. When you take a look at the bigger picture. Okay, so first off, we're talking about Wyckoff accumulation. I like to think I'm a student of Wyckoff, trying to learn and try to understand what's going on with it. The things that you're really looking for here are on the blue on the bottom. That's my 5-day moving average for volume. And what you're really looking at here is, when do we see these spikes? So when do we see these spikes? These spikes are showing up when we're pushing, showing that there's buyers on the lower end of the range. So what do you notice? What do you notice when we see these big pushes upward? And it usually happens with volume near the bottom, okay? So as a result, it's showing that the big money buyers are coming in. It's showing that it's also rejecting from these lower bounds and lower ranges, which means that they're accumulating. They're grabbing these shares. Oh, thank you. Thanks for bringing that up. There we go. That's why I got the chat up. You guys would make sure. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, again, KWeb has been in accumulation. It's this chart over here on the right that I can show you. It's called Wyckoff accumulation. There's a lot of resources online that you guys can go check out. And ultimately what it shows is that, you know, big money, the people that actually have money to move the stock market, move prices around, there are little signs within the chart that can help you understand that that's about to happen. When you go look at a lot of previous charts, my favorite one is Boeing to take a look at, is this type of pattern happens over and over and over. The entire, you know, let me show you. Let me draw one here. The accumulation to distribution type of chart, these cycles that we'll see happen over and over, and ultimately are, you know, it's just big money pushing money around, okay? And it's pushing the little people, you and I, around, because there are times where they will create fear in the markets so that they can snatch up these shares. Now, when we take a look over here at where we're at, this, I'll put it in yellow right now. We're in what we consider the last bit of the range. Wyckoff usually tells you to let these first 3 parts play out. So you have part 1 over here that creates the range, creates the blue box. You got part 2, which is them retesting and showing the different parts of, you know, picking up shares at lower ranges. And then you have your last point of supply before you see a sign of strength pushing up to the top. So as of now, we're in the top part of this range. We are now chopping around, taking the last bits of liquidity, and now we're actually about to push up toward the top. So if you screen up, go a lot closer in here, you can see right now kind of are in that little bit of a wedge, and we're starting to see a little bit of a breakout. Okay, you could grab it from down here. So KWeb, that was, you know, first off, my Wyckoff charts and shows us the ranges that we should be expecting. Right now we're looking for it to break up above 38. Then we're going to retest this 39. And after that, it should see a bit more of a push upward, because then we're going to head into another sign of strength and then potentially retest this 44 and higher. Okay. So the expectation with this, at least with the chart so far, is for us to see a push up, maybe come back and retest our breakout, and hopefully see a sign of strength. We should see volume ramp up in here for it to go up. Now, what put this onto my radar today is stacks. So we go into here, we put in KWeb. And first off as well, too, another thing in our flow scanner today, so we also saw KWeb in here, 1.98 mil to 66K. Okay, so that's a very bullish swing in terms of calls to puts. I posted this in my channel as well, is sometimes, you know, especially beginning of the week and end of the week, filter to see where there were 0 puts being taken. And you can see, for example, Riot was one of them that we just saw. Riot pushed up very heavily with all that bullish momentum. FSLR as well has been moving. Wolf also went up higher today as well. But KWeb, if we take a look over here at just the 818, which is today, from the morning all the way till close, they've been purchasing these calls for the $40 strike. $230,000, 125,000, another 56K, another 88K, 64K. We do have these. This one is a little bit more interesting. 1.26 mil being bought for the 39, and then they sold the 38. So that one's interesting. That overall could be a little more bearish though with the big money. But when you go and you filter for just and looking for just the buys, you can see for today, and that's how we can check it. Equals today, hit apply. Take a look at the top, right? We just have those puts, 66K being taken out, but we have a very bullish put to call ratio in this situation. The other thing too is the short term. They expect by Friday, and this one, they put 98K here. They expect by Friday for it to be above 36. SOBA, yes, we should expect Chinese stocks like BABA and PDD to pump since they are in KWeb. KWeb is a China ETF, some of their bigger stocks. 829, 829.39 is the aim, and then the 919. I like to look for a little bit more time on mine. I don't really love playing weeklies, especially because if they are out of the money, the theta decay tends to be quite extensive. If it doesn't make a quick move, you definitely can lose out. So for example, these guys right here, the $36 calls for this, they're already in the money. So technically, you know, at the end of the day, they could see it just kind of chop around and waver. They could just purchase those and exercise those options if they'd like to. So that's not as aggressive. But the, 829, 829, aiming for 39 and 38, that's out of the money. Only about 3 or 4% in those situations. All right. So that's for KWeb. Definitely think KWeb is headed up further, at least within the next month or so. We very likely should be seeing that test, that breakout. Next one, we got IWMs. Okay, IWM, in terms of the small cap, we saw this pretty extensive recovery after the April tariffs. And like I said, we've got distribution up here, accumulation down here. And this is a little, you know, the huge drop in recovery. It's kind of hard to tell, but you can see they did buy up near the bottom, okay? We're retesting this 230 range, which again, there's a lot in this range right now. If you take a look at the VRVP. All right, and so, yeah, it's got to break up above that. We do have a lot of buyers and sellers at the 222 range. I will say it's pushed up pretty quick and pretty heavy into that range so far, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it come back a little bit, possibly back down to this range and retest it before if it does head up further. There's a lot of talk about right now. I think what we're waiting on is basically the Jackson Hole speech by Powell. If they are going to be changing monetary policy, if they are going to start printing money or lowering, raising rates, whatever it is that's going to do, that's going to influence what direction we go to. I will even say today with what we saw in stacks, you know, there wasn't too much action. I think a lot of people are waiting on the sidelines to see what's actually going to happen with that before you know, making that move. So I think there's a lot of people sitting on their hands right now waiting for the next step. Now, I will point out, when you take a look at the ETFs on stacks, there's a lot of action going on. So for example, today, you know, I'll filter for the buys since the morning as well. See how big money is only getting into puts. So that's something that you should consider, is the fact that big money is a bit more bearish in this situation. You got them aiming for the 217, 227, 216. So they're all aiming for the downside on this. And also, if I do this, watch this right here. Big money has been accumulating those puts at this point. So I would definitely say, you know, there's some hesitation out there. They don't think IWM's just going to head up and straight up. Keep in mind, some of these are technically down a bit, but they are aiming for middle of next month. So they're expecting, you know, I'm thinking they're expecting something to happen with the rates that is going to end up influencing IWM to head down. They're, you know, especially with all the stuff where, you know, we had the revised job numbers, our PPI came in hot. I can't make a full prediction because Powell tends to, you know, he tends to hold off and let the data speak for itself. But at the end of the day, you know, we want a rate cut, but a rate cut will actually bring back more inflation. And also the PPI was super hot, so ultimately, you know, who knows? Like, if we saw a rate hike, that would spook the markets like crazy too. So your guess is as good as mine as of right now. There is a lot of expectations he's supposed to be cutting rates. I think it's like an 80 to 90% chance that he's going to next month. But we will see when it does fully play out. Intel. Okay, Intel. I got to point out, did you see any news on Intel today? I think that's a big, you know, especially with last week, we hear about this rumor that we're going to start seeing government intervention into this private company. Okay. Right. Possible U.S. government stake. But the thing that you guys have to keep in mind too was that news, that rumor and that news that already hit. So when we saw the big push up the last couple days with that, I think this run for now is at least it's over. Real quick, let me pull up stacks. There is a little bit of accumulation going on in that chart, but I will say that we saw these buys way earlier. We saw them on like the 12th, the 13th, and the 14th. I made these call outs for us in our Discord. And you can see how it's starting, they're starting to be more puts coming in. They're selling off a lot of those calls as well. So I will just say that there is still a possibility to the upside, but it feels like one of those, sell the news type of situations. Okay. So, if you're still in these, it's kind of, it chopped around and it dropped today. I think it's going to come back and retest some of these, some of the push up. We could see it back down toward about, I think, 22 or so. Keep in mind there's now a gap down back at that 20 range. But it has a little bit of that accumulation look to it. You do have a lot of volume near the bottom, volume near the bottom, volume near the bottom. So, if this does play out to be a sign of strength, we could see some, LPS, which is the last point of supply. We could see it getting snatched up. So if you see it come back down and it push back up pretty quick, we could see it end up breaking that if, bigger news comes out. But I would see it probably push up really fast and then sell off really quick too, because a lot of this, this news about Intel being acquired or the government taking a stake in it, that's being priced in at this point. So pretty, when the news finally does hit, you have to remember, it could very likely be a buy the rumor, sell the news. And especially with something like stacks, we already saw all the money flowing in the days beforehand. So on the 11th, 12th, and 13th, before this big push up, we already saw that starting to happen. All right, a lot of you guys wondering about PDD, the Chinese stocks. PDD also has a little bit of that accumulation look to it, where we got to see it break up above that 121. We're retesting it at this point, so definitely could see that. Earnings is supposed to be coming up pretty soon with that. We also have Alibaba, which has, I think, a little bit more of a definitive Wyckoff look to it. Looks very much like what KWeb looks like, where you have this giant wedge. It's broken out of this first wedge. Now you can say it's gonna have to retest this second one. So came back into it a little bit. I've been saying this for a while now, and it's kind of just dragged on. So China eventually will need to stimulate their economy by printing money. We do have some unusual big money calls coming in for March of next year. They're kind of pricey. So BABA, we also saw today with PDD. So this morning there was a lot of PDD calls that came in all together, and then we did see some puts being taken out later in the day. But I would definitely say this has more of a bullish push to it. These people could be hedging their position a little bit in terms of, expecting maybe a little bit of a pullback before it pushes up higher. But overall, I would say PDD has more of a bullish look to it. So especially if I go and I click on big money, everything since the 12th has all just been millions of dollars being poured into calls. So keep that in mind. Chinese companies are going to get an influx of money in due time. I can't predict when that's going to happen. Is there a catalyst for PDD? I wish I could tell you what exactly it is. I do think that something's about to come in. especially with what Stacks is saying. Earnings isn't going to be till... So this is an estimate. It's supposed to be estimated for this week, but that's not set in stone just yet. So earnings could be the catalyst. Stimulus for China could be the catalyst. You know, they could be announcing a partnership or some sort of, you know, some sort of good business that could end up pushing it up. So your guess is as good as mine. I've always said, if I had a crystal ball, you know, I'd tell you. If I had a crystal ball and knew what the future held, you know, we would full port some of these positions and get in on everything. But that's not how this works. We're going to take the probability chances of understanding, okay, number one, we're in this configuration of Wyckoff accumulation. We are at the upper ranges of it. We are starting to see a little bit of a breakout. We're, you know, near the higher end of it, and we're starting to see that big money in terms of their volume is accumulating at the lower ends of this range. So they do want to see it go up higher in time. The hardest part about options is figuring out how long it's going to take. So we saw this big push up earlier in February, but it didn't find its way all the way up right away. So it's been chopping around since. And that was actually when they did have a little bit of, they had 2 announcements about stimulus being put into their economy. So the first one was back here in September of 2024, and we heard a little bit more of it in January as well this year. So maybe we'll hear another announcement of that coming up. If that does come in, you know, we definitely could see that head up higher. UNH, the big name that's been coming up. So it's in the early situation of it. I definitely think with Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway taking a big stake in it, that's why you saw this push up. But it's going to create a range. So we could say this has been a major automatic reaction in terms of the pushback up. Okay, so it could head further up right away, or what we could see is it to retest the lower ends before it heads further up. All right, especially if so many big money interests are in it, they probably want to grab more shares if they can. So we might see additional campaigns for it to say, you know, stuff's still not right with the company, things like that. They did take like a $1.5 billion stake in it. There's now a giant gap down below. So we'll have to see, because again, their report was, you know, I need to double check when exactly he got in, but he got in pretty early. Okay, so remember, they report all together, but the dates that they purchased is extremely important. I'm getting into it. Don't worry. I'll look at AI. Your comment was next. But yes, UNH, long term, I will say, especially because their PE ratio is at 11. Long term, this is something that, you know, you could hold on to in your retirement portfolio. It will be higher in due time. But I would expect this to probably take some time to fully play out before it heads up further. We could see it come back a little bit, see it come back down right under 300. I think it probably would get snatched up at this point at those ranges. All right, AI. Ooh, it's all the way down over here. What happened to AI? Well, looks like their earnings have been good. It's just the fact that they're still not making money. They do have earnings coming up at the beginning of next month, so you have a few weeks. So I don't like, okay, so it's sold off up here. We do see some buying coming in down here. It, you know, it dropped low and then it pushed right back up immediately. So the fact that it's staying up above this, come on, I'll move it. Above 1711, that's a good sign for it. It's got a big giant gap above here to fill. I'll take a peek over at what Stacks has to say, but you've got this big giant gap for it to fill. So I would say once it breaks up above 1864, right, that's where you're, you know, it's filling. Technically the gap was all the way down to here already, but right now we're starting to peek into it. You have at least till, what, 1973, so you could expect it to fill in half of the gap before it sees some rejection. You do have a little bit of resistance at, what, 2059, and then eventually back up here at that 22. So could see 22 in due time. How long it's going to take is always the big question on that. Let's peek over at Stacks. Stacks is not... Let's filter. Not too much going on with it, but we did see $257,000 being purchased for that 22.5 call, and that's by next month. So they've got a month for that one. Not a bad. You know, smaller portfolios might enjoy this one. Could see it, especially as it breaks above this previous resistance that we just saw. So if we see it break above here, this 18.64, we could see it shoot up pretty quick. I would look to probably take profits right away on that. But yeah, Stacks doesn't have too much going on with this name. And in terms of the full picture of it, they've been selling a lot of these calls. But these, keep in mind, these were all expiring this week. So they might just be getting out of that position. Amazon and Google. I would say Amazon and Google, you should have gotten in on these before they pumped. I think, like I said earlier, a lot of these bigger names right now are just waiting for the decision from the Fed of what's going to happen next month. You had your opportunities to get in on a lot of these names a little bit earlier. I would say Google definitely looks a little more bullish right now, at least through the end of the month. Probably aiming for, what, 210 or a little bit above that. 205, 210, yep. Let's look at the charts. Yeah, Google, I wouldn't necessarily call it a double top just yet. There is a little bit of bearish divergence starting to happen on the daily for Google. So you could see it pull back toward about 200. I would kind of expect it to start getting bought up right at that range, though, at 200. Amazon's got a little bit of room. Retest that 236. There's a gap below at 227. I mean, they're strong companies overall, and I think the opportunities to buy were, you know, they've already, from when the April tariffs hit to, you know, the last 2 months or so, you had plenty of opportunities to get into them. Could it see higher highs and new all-time highs? Yeah, definitely. It's basically respected this upward channel at this point. And it's come back into this one, so I would even say now we kind of just have this bigger channel that it's going to bounce around in for now. So Well, Daniel, what's your thesis on this? Was this going to be a long-term play, or are you in options, right? If you're buying Amazon for your retirement portfolio, then no, you don't want to touch it. If you're in options that expire next week and you're in the green, okay, look over at how much it's run up, look at your indicators, and take a look at stacks to say, okay, well, maybe that run up is over and I need to, be careful with my risk right here, right? So, like if you have options that expire this Friday and you're still out of the money, then yeah, probably would want to exit. But if you're in something that's for 2027 and you're out of the money, and like again, what does stacks say for those positions and what are they aiming for? Right, long term, 2027. If you're in these ones, right? Yeah, you've definitely got time. You're still just at 230, okay? But if you were in these ones, the 822 235s, you might want to consider getting them out, right? Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say right now, until we get the announcement from the Fed what's actually going to happen, I would lean more toward making sure I protect my profits as much as possible. There's a possibility they're going to make an announcement and these are going to shoot up like crazy, but as of right now, we don't have that knowledge. We don't know what's going on. We can peek into what they're doing in the back end of things, but I will also say when you take a look at a lot of the ETFs that are being purchased, IBIT is Bitcoin, but what IWM fairly bearish. If I took a look at like SPY, a lot of the big money that we're seeing for SPY happens to be a little bit more bearish at this point too. Okay, and we already saw SPY start to push down a little bit. All right, guys. Let's jump back over and take a peek over at Palo Alto Networks. I didn't get a notification, so it looks like it just kind of chopped around afterwards. So they are up 5%. Kind of making a bit of a flag pattern right now. So you could call that a little bit of a bigger wedge, or if you want to just call it a flag coming down. I do think this could probably head up a little higher during open tomorrow, but probably will sell off after another push up. We'll see how the rest of the night, after hours plays out for it. The other one we were watching was BLNK. Not much has happened with it. It did run up 10% today and came back down 5% after the report. So they're technically still up for the day. Yeah, missed their EPS pretty heavy, but the revenue is looking a little better. All right, guys. The rest of the week, we do have some other bigger names. I would say Wednesday with Target. The bigger ones are going to be Thursday. So Walmart, Zoom, Intuit, Workday. Those are probably the bigger ones that we'll want to keep an eye out for. If you're in our Discord channels, if you're in Stacks, Max and I are putting together our earnings reports for you guys. So make sure that you guys go check that out. We'll see how the other positions we're in play out the rest of this week. But make sure you guys hit subscribe, hit that notification bell so that when I do go live later on this week that you guys are notified about it and you can jump in. All right. Hope you guys had a great live stream. I will see you guys in our next one. Oh, real quick, by the way, if you guys still want, there is that closing bell code for Stacks membership. And then the guy that asked earlier about Discord lifetime, go ahead and message me in the Discord, and I'll DM me directly in the Discord, and I'll chat with you there. All right. Hope you guys had a good one. I will see you guys in the next one.